Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and from viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, president of LPB. Joining me to explore the challenges of gun violence among Louisiana's youth is LPB News anchor Natasha Williams. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you. Good evening, Beth. Well, if you're watching here in Louisiana, there's a 50-50 chance you have a gun in your home. And if you have children, hopefully you've secured that firearm. Louisiana has already seen 4 unintentional shootings of youth this year, 2 which were fatal. State has the second highest rate of children under age 17 who were shot accidentally.
Well, even more troubling is this statistic. Louisiana leads the country in the rate of young people murdered by guns. Federal help through Project Safe Neighborhoods grants have targeted the illegal possession and use of guns. Shreveport has seen its gun violence drop by 11% since implementing the program. But what is the state doing itself to help reduce gun violence, particularly among juveniles? Tonight, we bring together students, parents, and members of law enforcement to examine youth and guns. It's been 11 months since the 21-year-old son of Murray Tate, known as Coach, was shot to death while helping a friend move. Jameson is survived by his 2-year-old daughter, Jamiri.
This past March was Jameson's birthday, and we went out to the cemetery. And she asked for a father.
Tate said his son was generous, fun-loving, and enjoyed playing basketball on the team that he coaches. So far, Jameson's shooting is unsolved, but Tate remains passionate for justice.
I'm sure somebody at that apartment complex saw something. Now whether they're afraid to speak up, but in a month, next year, even the next day, they could have lost a loved one or a close friend. And they would definitely want someone to speak up and say something.
Louisiana has the highest rate of gun homicides of young people aged 15 to 29 in the country. Black youth in America are 14 times more likely than their white counterparts to die by gun violence.
About 84-85% of our victims last year in 2018 were African American males. And when we look at the suspects, those who we believe are responsible for those who were arrested and or may be suspects in those cases are African American males in the 80% as well.
Murphy Joseph Paul is police chief of Baton Rouge. He says homicides are declining in the capital city, despite a rash of shootings this summer. One inside a nightclub injured 7 people.
We're seeing significant decreases over the summer. Last year when we looked at the summer months when it comes to homicides, those months where we see the most, we had around maybe 5 homicides. 2017, we had over 23, 24 during that same period.
Murphy attributes the decline to the over 300 community events the department participated in during the year. These outreach activities engage youth, particularly during the summer months. Local nonprofit programs like Truce also have made a dent.
They identify youths who want to change their lives and work with businesses, work with social service providers to help get these young men the help that they need to get off the streets.
Violence with guns, Murphy says, happens primarily because young people have an issue with conflict resolution.
And we've seen that plays a significant role here in Baton Rouge, particularly when it comes to those individuals who are involved in the rap industry, where we see differences or beef that are communicated in rap songs, and then that difference or a disagreement ends up into gun violence in the streets of Baton Rouge.
The department is targeting trouble spots in the city by using technology that indicates where shots are fired and sends additional data to authorities.
They're using that data and patrol strategies, where we are using that data to target specific areas, not just zones or subzones. We're getting very, very specific to street corners and 100 blocks, very defined areas where we're seeing some increased activity as it relates to shots fired incidents.
Since you must be 21 to purchase a handgun, Murphy says younger criminals are getting them illegally by stealing from cars, homes, and family members.
The better you secure your guns, the more difficult it is for a criminal to steal them.
Greg Ferries has been a firearm instructor since 1981. The right to possess a gun, he says, comes with the responsibility to safely store it, especially when children are around.
Almost every gun manufacturer packages with their firearm a safety lock, a padlock and a cable arrangement that will disable the firearm if it's applied. There are what's called biometric safes that respond to the touch. And then there are safes, like the old classic safe, stand up with a dial lock or a touch lock. And then, of course, absent all those, if it's small kids, there's the high shelf.
Louisiana has the second highest rate in the nation of children unintentionally shot. It doesn't have laws requiring the safe storage of guns. Ferries says it would be difficult to successfully prosecute a gun owner for negligent homicide in these situations.
I think that if your child or another child visiting your child is shot with your gun, I'm not sure there's any statutory law that can punish a parent more than the event itself would punish a parent.
The goal of the Be Smart program is to reduce access by young people and children from having access to guns.
Angele Bradford is head of the Louisiana chapter of Moms Demand Action, an organization founded following the Sandy Hook school shooting. Their Be Smart campaign supports safe storage laws. The group also advocates for universal background checks.
Right now we have things such as the gun show loophole where private sellers don't necessarily have to go through or have the patrons go through a background check. Some sellers honor it and others don't, but a universal background check would require all sellers to honor it.
A study released this month in the journal Pediatrics suggests a connection between lower shooting deaths of young people and states that require background checks for private sales. Bradford says there is also less gun trafficking in their cities.
A lot of people don't realize that lax gun laws in one state greatly impact the gun safety laws of another state. So it puts the onus on the entire country to be invested in common sense gun legislation.
For Tate, ending gun violence among youth requires people speaking up, both before and after an event occurs.
Anytime you harm anybody that's defenseless, I think you're a coward. And people in this community, if you witness it or if you saw something, heard something, I think you're a bigger coward because you don't come forward and say anything.
Picking up on tonight's issue is our studio audience. We have parents who've been directly affected by gun violence and community members who work to reduce it, including representatives from 100 Black Men, Metromorphosis, Moms Demand Action, Truce, and I Care. And we're joined by legislative youth advisory members from Shreveport, Monroe, and Hammond. Welcome, everyone. Earlier this year, Reuters conducted a poll of over 6,800 American adults on gun laws. Among its findings, to stop gun violence, 55% said they wanted policies that would make tougher to own guns, while 10% said making firearm ownership easier would be better. The top three ranked gun control measures favored by respondents were banning firearms from the mentally ill, supported by 87%, and expanding background checks, supported by 84%, and tracking the sale of firearms over a U.S. database, favored by 82%. And as far as school safety, 61% of parents said they favored public funding for firearms training for school personnel, and 54% said they approved of allowing school personnel to carry guns. So let's take our own survey. Tell me, from your perspective or your experience, what do you think is most effective in curbing gun violence among Louisiana's youth? How about you, Amy?
I think that education is important, but education is not enough. We have seen that the effective ways, proven effective ways to reduce gun violence are statutory measures, things like requiring a background check on every gun sale, requiring people to store their guns safely. There's a lot of gun violence in America. Americans are not more gun violent than other people, but we do have more access to guns, and it is easier for people who should not have firearms to get their hands on them. And we need to take action to change that.
How about someone who's had a personal experience with a gun? Share your story with me.
Well, my son was murdered in 2018, May 2nd, 2018. And he was murdered in the streets of Baton Rouge, from gun violence. And of course, they don't have a suspect, a motive, or anything. So we're still in the process of trying to find the perpetrator who killed him.
Rhonda?
Yes, my son was murdered in 2005. He was shot as well, and with a stolen firearm. The young man that shot him drove from Simmsport, Louisiana, that's near Alexandria, all the way to New Orleans and stole a relative's gun that he knew, because he was a convicted felon. He could not get a gun, but he knew where one was. And he drove there, stole the gun, came back that morning, waited in the bushes, and shot my son.
So do you have a particular feeling on maybe if that gun had been locked up or locked away? I mean, how did he get access to it?
Yes, I think that's a big part of the problem. To me, I think we all should have the right to have them in order to protect ourselves, but only we should know where that is. It should be kept in a safe place where, if need be, we can get to it, instead of having it lying around where anybody can come in and know, oh, okay, I know where to get one. So.
Anybody else? Julie?
Yes, I lost my son in 2017 by gun violence, and not much information was given as far as the person that took my son's life, but I will say that I believe that it was considered a semiotic weapon. I just don't understand how those individuals get hold to those guns. I just have to believe that it was possessed illegally, and I feel like a lot of these guns that these young people have, I mean, obviously they're illegal because they're not even old enough to have the guns. So parents, only thing I can say is to family members and friends, look at what it's doing to families that's out there who's losing their loved ones. You just irresponsibly leaving your guns, showing it off, and we have to do better, because we're not just protecting our families, but protecting other families that's outside of our homes, getting into the wrong hands. So I think we need to all do better and be more aware of how we handle our firearms. We need it to protect ourselves, but we need to be more responsible.
And the topic of it is youth and gun violence. Let's talk to some of the youth about that. Ashton, your particular feelings about the youth that have access to guns and are using them, to kill people, to hurt people.
Well, we had talked about in our school program, we talk about, drug influence with kids who, get high on, smoking marijuana. And they have this man who killed his girlfriend and his sister. He was high on marijuana, as well as I've had a friend of our family, who was shot by her boyfriend, and then he killed himself because he was on drugs. And I feel like when we talk about gun control, like you said, like any type of situation or whatever side you're on, I feel like even when people are in possession of guns legally, this man was a hunter and he had got his license, he still holds that gun, and because of the outside influences our world, especially with synthetic drugs that can just help your mental awareness as well as mental health with, especially with youth, getting access. Now we have people selling drugs in schools, and just our police departments, funding for that, how they can deal with that, and parents educating. There's so many different ways that they have influence on it, and there's, different perspectives. It's just the influence that a kid, especially today, and I love being on this panel, hearing the different thoughts about it, because you need to hear how all the influences, because this panel, it goes farther than this panel, thinking about all the influences that can affect people getting affected.
And we definitely have heard about drugs influencing people's decisions to do things that they would normally not do. What about video games? Do you think there's an influence of youth in video games? A lot of people talk about the violent nature of video games actually leading to the deaths of people. Maggie?
I think that video games have an influence in a way, but I think that video games aren't the leading cause. I don't think it's a big issue. I don't think that playing Call of Duty is going to lead you to more want to go shoot a gun, because it's so unrealistic in real life that to shooting a real gun, I don't think it really has that big of an impact on a student's mind to go and do it. I think it's more of a mental health issue than it is a video game issue.
So you think mental health could play a role?
Yes, definitely.
How about you, William? What is your particular opinion?
I would say that like a video game could exploit a particular already mental deficiency in a person. I would not say that a video game in any sense would mess with a normal person's mind. I would say that someone who's already suffering through something, they might be influenced in other ways by something. But it's kind of hard to stop someone like that from video games. It's not exactly how I would say that's causing anything.
Okay. Luke, tell me about your organization and what it does in the community.
So first of all, thank you all for having me, my name is Luke St. John McKnight. I serve as the Innovation Catalyst for Metamorphosis, and the heart of our work is to help people and organizations transform neglected and broken communities into thriving places to live, work, and experience success. We do that in a number of different strategies and scenarios, but one of our more prominent strategies is called the Urban Congress on African American Males. And essentially there are a litany of different community members, key actors that have convened on a regular basis to design sustainable solutions to any type of policy, practice, or statute that may negatively impact African American males indirectly or directly. And so one of our goals, one of our focuses inside the Urban Congress is health and wellness. And we look at gun violence as particularly a health issue among African American males, given that there is a disparity between the percentage of those being victims of gun violence being African American males.
Tanya, tell me about iCare.
So thank you for having me as well. The iCare program is under the umbrella of East Baton Rouge Parish Schools, and we focus on empowering students and parents to make healthy choices, educating parents, students, and staff on staying drug and alcohol free, as well as advocating with community partners to make healthy choices.
So you work with other organizations to try to kind of, I guess, bridge the gap?
Without a doubt. Yes, ma'am. We actually bring in community partners to the schools to focus on things like gun safety. We work very closely with Holly and Gun Safety, the Safety Place, and other organizations like community policing units to bring them in to show friendly faces, to communicate with the students, and to educate the parents as well.
And Captain Rodney, is that something that you guys kind of work with as well?
Yes, we try to work with Truce also, which is an organization that goes out in communities where kids are very aggressive. Working in law enforcement, you can see today many of our young people are very aggressive, very confrontational, and many hadn't learned how to diffuse that anger. So for them, when they get upset, they lash out. And so we try to have as many conversations as we can to say, okay, look, you two groups are having beefs, you're having problems, how can we work it out opposed to violence? Many of these kids don't know how to work that out. They just have to lash out aggressively. So we pound it every time we get a chance to talk to them. Look, there's other ways that you can disagree. We all have disagreements. We all have problems. We all sometimes may want to lash out. Even as adults, we have to learn how to diffuse and call a truce.
That's about all the time we have for this portion of our show. Now, when we return, we'll be joined by a panel of experts to discuss youth and guns. Make sure you stay with us. Welcome back to Louisiana Public Square. Tonight we're discussing guns and youth in Louisiana. Joining us now, our panel. Ashla Burgess is the executive director of Truce. Truce is a community-led nonprofit organization that uses group violence reduction strategies targeting youth between the ages of 14 and 24. The goal is to help prepare them for employment through education and skills training. Hiller Moore has been the district attorney for East Baton Rouge Parish since 2009. He formerly was a criminal defense attorney for 16 years and an investigator for the DA's office for 12. He received his crime scene training at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Reggie Morgan is an entrepreneur who runs a barbershop, recording studio, and painting company. Morgan was incarcerated for more than 10 years and was shot and left for dead. Today, he uses his faith to to send out a message of unity through music. And Jonathan Dunham is the Deputy Chief of Police for Baton Rouge Police Department. He joined the police department in 1989. In 2017, Dunham was appointed interim chief while Mayor Sharon Weston Broome searched for a new chief of police. After Chief Murphy Paul's appointment, Dunham was named Police Chief, Deputy Chief, and Chief of Staff. Before we go to our audience for questions, I'd like to ask each of you, from your own perspective, give a letter grade on how Louisiana is addressing youth violence. Starting with you, Ms. Burgess.
If I had to give Louisiana a letter grade, I probably would give us a good C, in that there's always room for improvement. I think that each city, they're doing their own kind of strategies and implementing their own programs to eliminate youth violence in our city. But I think we have so much room for growth. So I would definitely probably give us a solid C, because we have a lot of growing to do. But I think each city in the state, they're doing something to address youth violence.
Okay.
So I think it's really hard to give a grade to the state, not knowing all the parts of the state. And you really have to give a grade to parents, you have to grade to education, all of the other things that really make up youth violence and encompasses youth violence. So it's hard to just give one grade. For Baton Rouge, I can tell you that the effort is an A and a B. Yeah. Some of the services maybe that we have are lacking, maybe a C. But surely we know that there's a huge need for us to address youth, the parents, the community, the neighborhood. And that's really the only way we're going to address youth and gun violence right now. And so we have to really spend a lot of money in our youth, in our education, our communities. And so we have a long way to go, but I think that we're making the effort. The heart is there, collaboration's there. It's a matter of everyone really coming together as one and making this a whole community issue and not just a personal, one part of the community issue overall.
Reggie?
In unifying the city, I would have to say at this point a C, because we're working, we're at it. A lot have happened in the past, but hey, we all have a past. We look forward to the future, and right now we're at a C and we're moving to a B and to an A.
Okay.
You know, honestly, statistics don't lie, and in Louisiana, unfortunately, the state as a whole is at the very top. You know, the state as a whole, I would probably have to give it an F. But for Baton Rouge and what the progress and things that I've seen from the district attorney, the police department, the public in general, I'd have to give us a solid B. That there's some room for improvement, but in Baton Rouge itself, I think we've made some serious strides since 2017.
I think strides have been made, but let's talk with Fred for a second about what 100 Black Men is trying to do in the community. We still see the statistics all over the state. You know, anytime you look at a newspaper or a website, you know, another shooting, another child shot, another youth that's involved in violence. What is the 100 Black Men organization? What is your organization trying to do to diffuse that?
Well, number one, 100 Black Men, we've been in the community now for about 26 years, and the whole purpose of our organization is to try to either we implement programs or support programs that work with youth. We recently got a grant from the Justice Department, and we're working with the Baton Rouge City Police and some other community organizations. One of the things that we found is the grant is called Collective Healing. And so we put on a program called Respect and Authority. And so in that program, young folk come in, and for the most part, they all seem to think that the police are doing a bad job. And so the whole program is all about teaching respect, giving them a perspective from a police perspective, as well as getting the police to see things from their perspective. So they come in one way, but they leave out. When they leave out, they have for the most part, they have a whole different perspective on what the police are doing and can appreciate them a little bit more. So everybody learns. The police learn a little bit from them, and they learn a little bit from the police. We did another session, listening session, where we went into the community and we want to find out from the community what's upsetting you guys. and we hear some of the same thing, but something that we heard from young folk about guns, that we talked about guns earlier, and I didn't hear mentioned, is that the young people, it seems like the law-abiding kids that you would say law-abiding, the ones who respect each other, a lot of them are afraid. And so they feel that they need weapons to protect themselves. And so I think that some of those, you may have some gangbangers out who are just doing some stuff that they don't supposed to, but the kids who are actually trying to do the right thing, some of them are afraid because you got a lot of folk out there who are not doing the right things, and so they feel like they have to protect themselves. And so I think that if we can make them feel more secure in their neighborhoods, well, then that'll take care of some of the.
And the 100 Black Men is an organization that's all across the country and in other parts of Louisiana as well, right?
We got, the organization is actually an international organization. We got chapters, over 100 chapters worldwide.
Okay.
And we have about 4 chapters here in the state of Louisiana.
Okay, thank you. Holly, you had a question that you wanted to address to our panel?
Yes, so my office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, is a stakeholder in a couple of educational programs that are designed to educate children about the dangers of playing with guns. And so one being Project Child Safe. They promote safety awareness. They give gun locks to firearm owners to help secure their guns. And then we also have Louisiana Law Enforcement for Gun Safety, which goes into the schools and different groups and educate the children and dispel the notions of what they think, the difference between real and toy guns are and things like that. So we really target the children, but as far as parents, we talk to the children about sex and alcohol and drug use, but how can we open the door to talk about this conversation? And just as importantly, the parents talking to their children who don't have guns. A lot of people think, well, I don't own guns, so it's not my problem. But the reality is that your child is going to come in contact with a gun at some point in time, and they need to know how to react.
It really comes down to the family unit in the neighborhood and the teachers at the school. And oftentimes, unfortunately, a lot of these young kids are being raised by someone other than their mother or the father, grandparents, or other children that we see. It's depending on where you are, it's a different tough conversation. As the gentleman mentioned, sometimes these young kids feel they need a weapon to protect themselves, and maybe themselves are not in any gang or group that would cause them any need, but they feel that they need that. That's a tough conversation to have. And so what do you do when you find your child who's under 21 that has a gun? Who do you call? Who do you give the gun to? How do you confront that child? How do you secure that weapon? Difficult conversations to have, but it surely has to happen, I believe, in everyone's house, and it has to also be surrounded by that neighborhood, by that community. Everybody has to have each other's back, and I think that's where we're kind of lacking at this point right now, and it has to start individually in the house.
I agree with Hiller. I think it has to start in the house. Chief Paul recently made a statement that if you need to search your kids' rooms. I mean, they're your kids. Search your kids' rooms for guns and contraband, and if you find a gun in the room, call the police department. We'll be more than happy to come and not ask any questions to get the gun from you. I know this weekend Hiller's promoting a gun buyback, where a Gas for Guns program that he started, and it's been successful over the last few years to kind of reduce guns in homes that people don't feel like they don't have any need for, that could end up falling into the wrong hands and end up getting a child hurt. So you need to have that conversation with your kids. You need to also check their rooms, check their cars, check their book sacks. If you find one, we won't ask any questions. Just call us and we'll come and get it.
I want to circle to Timothy for a second. Tell me about how gun violence just recently touched you.
I have a little cousin. He's going to BRCC, and he actually shot himself in the face. And I was talking with his dad today, and he said it was because of depression, simply because they dropped the class and financial aid. So it's so many different things that causes things to happen. So that's why I express myself as far as us caring about each other and being able to reach out and see that other person need more than we see ourselves. So, you know, this panel is being on here today is just kind of like overwhelming, because we really, really, truly need to reach out, and we need to come together and make a difference.
Aisha, could you talk about like any mental health programs that you guys have through your program?
Well, through Truth, we're able to refer a lot of our young people to social service providers. So those are the tough questions that we ask. We want to know what's going on with a youth when they're coming in, so that we can make the necessary referrals, because you will be absolutely surprised of the things that a young person, especially your high school students, are dealing with on a daily basis. And sometimes just that small conversation that you would have to ask that question, how are you today? What's going on with you? How can I help you? You didn't look right today. Or you're not smiling like you used to smile. That small conversation can sometimes save a life. And so we make sure to reach out to have great relationships with the guidance counselors at the school, so that if we're noticing something through a session that we're having with young people, to make sure that the parents are aware of the social service providers out there. And we're at different community events to meet new providers that we may not know about, because what we've learned is that the therapist or your mental health provider, that relationship is so important. So making sure that a young person connects with the right person, and not just referring them just to say that we're referring them, but referring them to someone that they're going to connect with.
And how do people become a part of Truce?
It's very easy. You can call us at 225-239-7835. We're located at 1120 Government Street. We are the building with the lime green door, so you will not miss us on the compound. And you can just show up. We accept walk-ins, and we do serve young people 14 to 24, but we won't turn anyone away. If you're 25, if you're 26, we had someone call us at the age of 30. Whatever we can do to help you, we will. And if it's something that we cannot do, we'll make sure that you receive the necessary services that we know about in our community.
Michael, you have a question for Reggie?
Yes, well, a large part of my life is dedicated to the work of Metromorphosis, which has an organization called the Urban Congress on African American Males that works to primarily transform the experience for black men and boys in Baton Rouge. Now, I see your role in the community is very unique, because many times both the suspect and the victim can be a black male. But you are an entrepreneur, so you're a leader in your community or within your family. Because of that point, then you have a barbershop, which is the main place where most conversations are held with black men and boys. Also, you have a music company. So with music, that's one of the main ways that messages are communicated through youth. As we know, in Baton Rouge, there's a lot of violence that can stem from music. Right. And the message that you bring through that music, from that producer to that artist, has resulted in lots of things, lots of violence that we've seen around our city. That's just, that's the facts. Right. So what are you doing with your studio that can change this narrative, that can have a young black man walk into your studio and say, hey, I don't want to be the next rapper that's dead on the street. I want to be a rapper that makes a song that can actually bring life to the community.
Well, first, for the last year, I've drawn lines. No cursing, no talking about drugs, guns, no violence. And we do that because we mold and shape and tell them, I want to see what else you have. It's more in you. And a lot of times we only could operate off of what we know and what we've been fed. You hear the saying, you are what you eat. And a lot of times in our community, urban community, our culture is hip hop, it's cool, it's swag, and it's not talking about the things that need to be spoken on. So I give that environment to where you can speak what needs to be said. To answer your question in a more direct manner, during the storm, God spoke to me. and he told me to take the Bible. And right now we need help. If anyone can help, we're taking the Bible and turning it into our songs, the whole Bible. No adding, no taking away. We're going to take the Bible because the truth is the only thing going to set us free. And the word, every man is a lie, but the word of God is the truth. So we're going to give them the word of God in music. You know, music opens you up to receive. A lot of kids, and we have to understand as well, and especially with a district attorney, you know, we see a lot of violence going on, but we have to see beyond the violence, because what caused that? Just like yesterday, one of my cousins shot himself. He's not a violent person, but he's going through so much. It's so the pressures of life. So we need an avenue. We need to come together and, you know, more than just talking, coming together and really being a voice and being that support system together to help the unity. So the Bible, the Word of God, that's the key in music to help the generation that I see.
You're using your faith to get the message out.
Right.
Okay.
How do y'all think our educational system, or do you think they can do more to help reduce gun violence?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that, you know, we see the cuts in our system already, and that's where our youth are. I mean, they're in our public schools, and we see high levels of truancy, and we see these kids that are struggling, and the teachers are the front line oftentimes for these kids, and we need to have the best that we can in the school to educate them. We need to make sure they're in the class, make sure they're healthy, and I think they could really teach the message of nonviolence, and there should probably be some curriculum about anger management and how do you resolve conflicts. And I think if we had that in every class, and if all the classes were able to open up and talk about issues that they're having, we could probably see a lot more benefits from that. So that's a challenge and a chore because everybody's strapped cash-wise. So, but I think that's imperative for us to move forward.
William, let's hear from you. You are one of the youth advisory members on the panel.
So, us at the Youth Advisory Council, we're going to be the future leaders of our state, and we're going to inherit this problem along with many others. So what would you say to us, the youth of Louisiana, about fixing this problem?
I think you start now. I think you start discussing it, having open conversations about it, about why you need guns, why do you, when you get in an argument, you know, when I was younger it was a fist fight, now it turns into gun violence. You know, to talk about those things, and I think opening up and discussing it, and then you can get to the answers to those questions.
Let me circle back. We talk about all the violence and guns. Have either of you been afraid when you went to school one day? Just crossed your mind because of all the school shootings and things that have happened with guns?
Well, at my school, in relation to guns, we had a bomb threat for 2 days, and we had resource officers had to additional. I've never seen that many police officers in a school before. My community has never had, you know, we've never had metal detectors, anything like that. So I've never felt unsafe with my school because I live in a, you know, relatively quiet community. But just I fear for the teachers and the students when getting prepared for this, especially when the Parkland shooting happened. It was just like this. We had to learn how to deal with something we'd never thought of before. My parents, I'm sure of y'all, didn't have to experience that in school. So I just guess preparedness, always thinking of how are we prepared for this, because there's so many different situations, so many different ways to get into the school, so many different, like, mental illness. Do they have, what kind of weapon do they have? Can our police get there fast enough? Do we have the resources? I guess that's always been the back of my mind.
Maggie, you're from Monroe, representing the Youth Council. What is your feeling?
I've definitely been scared to go to school. I've definitely been affected by it because, like he was saying, there are just so many different possibilities. Like, I know at my school, after the Parkland shooting, we had students scared, we had teachers scared, because we were actually scheduled the day after to have a lockdown drill, and they had to cancel it. They had to change policy at our school. We even now, when we have a fire drill, we have to wait to make sure it's actually a fire drill because of what happened at Parkland. And it's just kind of ridiculous that has to even happen in our schools, that when we hear fire drill, we have to actually wait and make sure it's an actual fire drill. So there definitely is that fear behind going to school. And if I had a question for the panel, I would ask, as leaders in like our schools and our communities, what would you suggest? As you were saying, like teachers are the front lines. I think students are even more on the front line because those are the people we're with every day. What kind of programs would you suggest adding into schools that can have students as the leaders and like the front lines listening and being the ears for the adults?
I think like Hiller said, I think having conflict resolution courses and things like that in the schools will make a big difference. Liz and I went to school together, graduated together. I don't think we ever had to deal with those issues. I mean, Liz, did you? We were never scared to go to school. We didn't have that issue, and that was in the late '80s, so we're '86. So, I think having those conflict resolution courses are a start. It's a good start because I think if you reduce that conflict that the kids have, and it teaches somebody how to deal with that conflict as opposed to going home and 75% of your school shootings are guns that come from somebody's house. They take the gun from their house or relative's home. So, just to get that out of their mind to begin with, and then having mental health related issues possibly, and having counselors and things to deal with that. I know we train constantly on active shooter situations. Our SRT team, our hostage rescue team, is constantly going and with the school board here and going to schools and doing active shooter drills. Officers are trained to immediately respond, to do not wait. If there's a situation where there's an active shooter in a school, the officers are mandated to go in to that situation to try to diffuse that threat and provide trauma care. All of our officers are trained in how to put on tourniquets and do initial first aid that can help save a life. So.
And also, I think if you start any type of kind of mentoring program in your school where maybe upperclassmen would have like a little mentee or something for a younger, or some type of partnership where if someone is going through something, they know this is a group of individuals that we trust enough that we can say something to, with the understanding that you will have a good relationship with administration to be able to report something. Because what we've noticed so much is that a lot of what we see and a lot of violence in our community is communicated through social media, and kids see it all the time, and they're always telling us, oh, I knew that was going to happen because such and such put it on Snapchat, or such and such said something on Instagram. So if there's a way that you can start something where the kids are open to having a conversation with maybe a group of kids to say, hey, I saw this, Maggie, on social media, you may want to tell Dean, whoever, or your guidance counselors, where there's just an avenue where crimes, violence, or even this is a young person that's depressed. I've been talking to them, I've noticed something, maybe a guidance counselor should reach out to that individual. I think any type of mentoring program, because I think kids relate better to each other than they would want to have a conversation with one of us. That would be so helpful, because honestly, everything is communicated on some form or some platform of social media, and we won't know about it until a violent act would happen or a shooting. So anything to give a young person an avenue to have a conversation.
Let's talk about this snitch conversation. Let's have that, because that's a big deterrent in, could probably stop a lot of the shootings and things that happen. How do you deal with the snitch thing? I mean, I know that you've told me, you're promoting something that, hey, speak up, say something. And I know that everyone here on this panel wants to hear the same thing.
Yeah, we really don't want you to snitch, we want you to save a life.
Right.
And I think the chore for the students here in the future is how can we get, because the students know who's feuding with each other, who has a gun. Same thing in the community. They all know who these people here who's lost someone, they know who killed them. And if they could only just tell us and only talk. But everyone's afraid to talk. Everyone's afraid to condemn the gun violence. When someone shoots, it's just another shooting, we'll go our way again. I mean, that has to eventually stop. Everyone has to say, no, stop. We can't have this violence in our community, can't have it in the school. And that's going to be the big fix. How can we get that trust back again with the community and law enforcement? It has to be built over time. It's not going to be easy, but we could solve a lot of crimes for the pain that these people have. If people would just tell us what they know, don't wait till it happens. Just save a life, say something.
I think that and then speaking from an urban community, from prison and all, the snitch story got twisted because, say for instance, I never do anything wrong. I'm a right person doing the right thing, and you selling drugs and you doing whatever you do, and something happened. I'm not a snitch. Look, you did this. Now a snitch is this: if we're together and we're doing something together, and I get caught, and I say he was with me, that's a snitch. You know, I think that if we could really get the information and let people know what a snitch is, you're not a snitch if you're not doing anything and the other person is. You're just telling the truth.
Let's talk about an organization you and Coach Tate are trying to get together to get people to speak up, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, actually, Rhonda and Julie is a part of it. It's called Change. We're actually, next week or so, we're trying to get the community to come out. We're trying to do 5 communities in 5 days. We don't want the law enforcement. We don't want political. We just want the community to come out. We have some questions. We're going to do some round table discussions and just get the community to see how we can bridge the gap between the trust with the police department and the community, how we can try to stop some of the violence. And what we're going to do is collectively get everything together in a week in those 5 communities, 7805, 7802, you know, Scotland area, just the 5 main focus parts of Baton Rouge. And we're going to come back together collectively and come back to what we came up with and bring that back to the mayor and the police chief and see how we can try to bridge some of the problems that we're having. I don't specifically have a question, but I think the internet is such a big part to our crime in Baton Rouge. It's a lot of beefing, you know, and they beefing over, a lot of it is rap. You know, once I say something about you, you say something about me, then now we beefing. You know, and it's not going to stop until one of them hurt each other, and then now we got another killing on each other. But then they sorry because they pulled the trigger, you know, because now you can't take that back. So, you know, and rapping is just so, you know, like he said, he's trying to change it, but they just take it so out of content. You know, and we as people, we have to, like he say, we have to start loving each other and start rapping about, you know, and I know a lot of people go through a lot of things, you know, because I was a bus driver, so I used to see it firsthand. Like she said, you could see it when they come on a bus, you know, because I was such a caring bus driver. I could tell something happened yesterday. Or I could tell you didn't eat, or you wasn't able to wash your clothes. I didn't allow bullying on my bus. You know, you're not gonna talk about nobody on here. If you got a problem, bring it to me, and I'm gonna solve it. You know, I didn't allow all of that on my bus. You know, and us as bus drivers, we the first people they see in the morning. You know, so we as bus drivers had to try to direct those kids in the right path, because I've seen kids, parents, police officers, lawyers, whatever, they kids get on the bus. When they get on that bus, they whole demeanor changes. They go to sagging their pants because they're trying to fit in. You know, they're trying to fit in with the person who they're scared of, you know, and they have to change their whole demeanor because they're trying to fit in and they're afraid, you know, because they don't want nobody to bully them. So I don't have a question, but I just think that we just have to start policing our kids on the internet and talk to them daily. You know, sometimes we're not gonna like everything they say, of course not. But me as a parent, mine gonna listen to what I have to say. They just gonna listen, and you know, you go out there and you get yourself in trouble, I'ma drill them. You know, those are the consequences that you're gonna have to live with. But I'm gonna tell you the way that it is. You know, so that's just what I have to say. But
we talk about like a way of reporting crime. Crime Stoppers is something that, you know, you almost hear in your sleep. You know, if you have a crime, you have something to say, you can call Crime Stoppers at, you know, a number, whatever the number is.
344-7867 or 344-STOP.
Stop, exactly. So is that a good resource for people in the community? Because people are often afraid, you know, does Anonymous really work? Is
Yes.
Anonymous really anonymous?
Yes, it is court tested. It is anonymous. I actually started my career in Crime Stoppers answering the phones as a police cadet, taking tips, running them down the hall to the detectives, and watching the fruits of the information that the public gave result in the clearance of a crime. And it's kind of what got me addicted to police work, and so it works. I can definitely tell you it works, and you are going to remain anonymous.
So you can see something online and call Crime Stoppers and report it, and there will be some follow-up.
Yep.
And if there's a cash reward available, you could get it.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
Does someone else have a question? Tanya?
Well, I want to just kind of say a few things. I appreciate you all being here as a panel. As an eye care specialist, we do provide conflict resolution in the schools. We also want to encourage students to have appropriate coping mechanisms. And so in dealing with recent trauma in Baton Rouge as well as the flood, we all know that emotions are high. We have mental health issues, and so if a school is in need of that, each school in East Baton Rouge Parish has an eye care specialist. And so we want to make sure that parents know that that resource is free. We are available. We can be referred by parents, by family members, or by school staff. And so each school in East Baton Rouge Parish has that. And so I also wanted to say, William, you pointed out some really good things about just an overall climate of a school. We have a right to possibly have weapons, but we also have a responsibility. And so as parents, as community professionals, as youth, it's our responsibility to speak up, to empower one another, to do what we can to help each other. But I also want to say that the climate of the community is also something that we need to discuss. And so in that, what can we do to bridge that gap as a community here with this panel tonight? What kind of tips do we have for community building?
I would say, and we've spoke about this, and Miss Elizabeth just said about how the music they have a point to prove. When they get into a situation, either I'm gonna look like a coward or I'm gonna have to do something. So if we could start a movement, God has showed me, if we could just start a movement, start something cool. Let's make it cool. Overlook your enemy. I'm gonna let you slide. And if we can make that cool to where they have an option, my girlfriend right here, oh, why you lucky I'm gonna let you slide? Cause it's cool to let you slide. I'm gonna overlook you. So I think things like that, if we could really stamp that and give them an option, because music, if we really just, right now we could put some music on and we really listen. I don't know if we really hear what's going on or what our kids listening to. Murder, kill him. If he take your chips, kill him. If he eats it, kill him for anything. So we need to counteract. That's what I would say. We need to give them an option. Overlook the enemy, let them slide.
And one other thing I would add to that is I would encourage the community to engage young people. So often we're very afraid to talk to them, but if you see a young person, just because his pants sagging, he may have on a white tee or t-shirt, your stereotypical, this is criminal dressing behavior, then have a conversation with them, because you would be absolutely surprised of how that conversation can change and turn a life. So I would just ask for the community to not just say, oh, that's your problem, that's your kid, that's not my kid. We have to get back to our children are our children, and that we're getting back to this village of caring for each other's children. So, and have a conversation, not judge because this is a young man on a corner. Let's find out why. Let's find out what happened to him. Or, oh, this is a young person, I saw him stealing out the store. Well, why? Maybe the family's hungry. What can we do to alleviate and bridge that gap in your family? How can we refer you to another resource? So let's get away with the judging of people and become more loving and caring about people as a whole, and just have open dialogue and conversations and be receptive to what you may hear. So that would be my suggestion for the community, is to get back community. The unity in community, I think, is what we need right now for our children, to save our young people.
I think the other thing we want to talk about is that we're talking about African American young males with guns that are killing each other, mainly here. I think we have to make sure that we characterize young black males, African American males, in the right way. Right. And Metromorphosis and 100 Black Men are really doing the right, proper thing, because overwhelming majority of young black males are very successful, educated, have great families. So when we see someone that's involved in a shooting, everyone jumps to label someone in such a way. But these two organizations that are represented here today do a great job of letting the community know, hey, this is not the face of young children in Baton Rouge. We have an overwhelming great majority of people who are living the best life, great life, and we have to make sure that we don't mischaracterize those.
Reggie, a closing comment?
I would say throughout all, unity, coming together, understanding each other, listening. You know, a lot of times we're so busy. If we could just create an environment for the youth to come and talk and we just listen. If we could just listen, I think that would help a lot.
Okay, Deputy Chief?
You know, I think over the years we've seen an evolution of policing. I think that in the past we went through a broken windows theory where we saturated areas, we wrote summonses to everybody in an area if it was a high crime area, we wrote tickets to everybody, and I think policing has changed now, especially over the last couple of years, to a approach that is more data driven, getting specific about the small, like Hiller said, the small percentage of people that are committing the vast majority of crimes. I mean, we're talking 3-4% maybe that are committing the crimes in an area. Everybody else is fine, upstanding people that just want to live a normal life. So being able just to target those small segment of individuals helps to build community trust between the police and the public. And I think building community trust helps the public to feel more comfortable into speaking out about issues and things that they have, which will ultimately lead to higher clearance rates, hopefully less arrests and less crime.
Okay, great discussion, everyone. I want to thank you for coming. We've run out of time for this question and answer segment. I'd like to thank the panelists, Ms. Burgess, D.A. Moore, Mr. Morgan, and Deputy Chief Dunham for their insights on this month's topic. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments. Stay with us.
Well, Natasha, there couldn't be a more important topic than the one we talked about tonight.
As a mother, I definitely agree.
Well, that's all the time we have for tonight's program. We encourage you to visit our website at lpb.org/public square for gun violence prevention resources and additional interview sound bites. You may also comment on the show under the Join the Conversation tab.
In October, Louisiana will be holding an election for governor, state representatives, and legislators, as well as members of the Education Board. But does anyone care? Next month, Louisiana Public Square looks for ways to get voters more interested in the political process and running for office on Engaging Louisiana. Join us on August 28th. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.